They caught him like, what the are they doing, man? And then I called the same play. So I called again because I'm trying to get him to rip the hitch because they're playing 10 yards off. They do it again. This time the defense is like, yeah, you're not just gonna catch it and throw it to this guy walking off the line on a seam. They do it, almost gets picked off. They come to the sideline. I'm like, what the hell was that? Well, we did it in sevens. I'm like, bro, I literally like, you got to get away from me right now.
On today's episode of the Left Hash Call, we have Austin Bell. Austin is the current quarterbacks coach at Chandler High School. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Chandler, it is one of the premier high school football programs in not only Arizona, but the entire country. Austin is a former Division III wide receiver, as well as my former teammate and college roommate. Ladies and gentlemen, Austin Bell. Did I get all that right?
Yep. That was all perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. I wanted to just start off and talk about, your journey to where you are right now and just kind of recap everything that, you've been through all the way up to what you're currently doing. Austin grew up in Chandler, Arizona, went to Hamilton High School, was a high school quarterback, ended up playing behind a kid that's now training to be in the NFL. Am I correct about that? Yeah. So went through kind of a position change once he got to college and ended up playing at Simpson College with me and played receiver up there. While you're in high school, I would consider your play style as an option style quarterback. And then obviously there's some transition there, but just kind of talk about what brought you to playing Division III football, not only Division III football, but all the way from Arizona to Iowa.
Yeah, so like you said, I played quarterback out here in the Chandler area, Hamilton High School, which is again another big time program. Still was way before I got there, and then was when I was there. So yeah, I played quarterback. The guy you mentioned, Tyler Shuck, we kind of split time. He was mostly the starter my senior year, but yeah, ran the veer option, which we don't suggest any quarterback ever go through. Just it beats up on your body. Not that I couldn't throw the ball, I was an undersized guy, 5'11", so the typical Russell Wilson, Johnny Football is the guy I looked up to. So I could sling it, but obviously when you have the ability to move, that's going to be, especially when you notice at high school guys, that's going to be kind of your first option at times. When I got done, actually in the middle of my senior year, I ended up separating my shoulder, kind of doing a lot of damage to it. And then the mental part of quarterback, it just takes a lot to try and do. And then going to college, I was like, you know what, do I want to continue to mentally go through this? Physically, still quarterback's a physically demanding position, no matter what people think. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to transfer this knowledge that I have of breaking down playbooks, understanding playbooks, and take it to receiver, which, you see a lot of quarterbacks transfer to receiver at times, whether it's NFL or college to NFL, even NFL to NFL, good example. Josh McCown, who's now the quarterback's coach over with the Vikings, played a couple of games at receiver, which is still funny to go back and watch. So I was like, I'll just go play receiver. Coach James Hoffman, who was the offensive coordinator at Simpson, receivers coach at the time when he was recruiting me, ended up reaching out to me, kind of trying to put the feels like, hey, do you still want to play quarterback? I was like, no, I kind of want to transfer receiver. So he kind of tried to feel that out to see if I would still, because they were trying to get a couple quarterbacks into that class. It was me, Austin Helt, Drake Whaley. I was like, no, I want to play receiver. So ended up, go on a couple visits. My last visit was Simpson. And I was like, and my whole family's from Iowa, so the Iowa area was still familiar to me, but far enough away from home to where it's like that true college experience of going on, kind of living on your own. So I ended up choosing Simpson. I love the campus. I love the coaches. Chose Simpson, played 5 years there, played a big time role for 4 years of those 5 playing receiver. Like I said, I used that knowledge of playing quarterback, which, any receiver should do, of breaking down every single piece of it. I would break down the X, the Y, the Z, the tight end, right? As you know, I'd get put in line and have to block linebackers, D linemen a lot of times, especially those last couple of years, to allow myself to understand the knowledge of the receiver spot, what it asked. And then I once I started getting later into it, you get roommates like Seth. I started breaking down some of the quarterback reads, like why do I need to be in a certain spot at this time. Plus, it was good. I liked being the quote unquote coach in the room. We had a couple coaches at the receiver spot when Coach Hoffman ended up moving to coach quarterback. So I liked being the guy that kind of knew everything. The young guys go and ask, "Hey, what am I doing on this?" So even some of the older guys would ask, which I always thought was funny. But yeah, that's just kind of how I got there. And then as my fifth year was winding down, still kind of feeling out what I wanted to do. Sports communication major, so I could have went and done journalism, could have been, an admin, maybe done like an assistant athletic director, something like that. But then coach over at Chandler, who I knew, reached out to me, asked if I would be interested in coming in on as a freshman coach to start off come be his quarterbacks coach, his pass game coordinator. And then, yeah, so once I graduated, I kind of hit the ground running there. Literally the second I moved back, the day after, we started doing, summer stuff, getting into installs with the new group. And then I've been there ever since and been loving every second of it.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm familiar with your story. We were college roommates, learned a ton about each other. We'll both stand in each other's weddings one day because you recently just got engaged, of course. So obviously, congratulations on that. Talk about that transition. As much as it is a mental challenge, it's also a physical challenge of changing positions because, I'd kind of been through it very, very in small sample sizes of playing some receiver here and there, but obviously I played quarterback in high school and in college. It's a lot different. It takes a little bit different toll on your body and more on your legs, I would say. I'd say quarterback, obviously more maintenance on the shoulder, of course, and then I think also just the core region and your abdominals because that's really where you take a majority of those hits. What was kind of that transition like right away as far as how you had to prepare, not only physically but mentally?
Yeah, so the physical part, like you said, it's the toughest because you go from, I call it quarterback conditioning, to
Court.
another skill position. And
Right.
again, running the veer offense, it's not like I was dropping back, boom, throw, okay, get set. I was read, run, toss, read, run, take off. So I had a little bit of it, but when I decided to finally move, I had a couple of trainers in the Valley. I trained over at Elite U, who's a big time trainer, trains a bunch of NFL, college, high school guys. He got me in there, started getting me worked on my body mechanics and learning how to run more efficiently, learning the mechanics of playing receiver on top of the conditioning of it. So that was definitely the hardest to learn. Again, learning the different movements of how to get in and out of breaks, how to be in the right spots. Like I said, I always knew the X's, the O's. Okay, run a post, you get to 10, break, whatever the offense calls for. Now I need to learn how to do that with someone in my face, with someone off, learn back leverage, learning to do that in the middle of a drive when maybe you're in play 6, play 7, when your legs are a lot more tired than they usually are. So that was definitely a transition, and I learned that very early on in fall camp, my going in my freshman year when I first got there. I came onto the scene. I was Coach Hoffman, Coach Dieter could check me on this, but I was for sure I was making the travel roster. In my opinion, I was tearing it up. Then you get to week 2 of camp, and your legs are, man, you could barely walk. Right, you got you got early morning lift, you got film, then you've got a little kind of a walkthrough. Then you go eat lunch, and then you get to practice. And then after practice, you go eat. Then you go into film till about 10 o'clock, 11 sometimes, depending on how the day went. Then you do it again the next day. So the practices 1 through about 6 to 7, I was humming. I was tearing it up. And then around week 2, my legs started getting heavy. I call them week 2 camp legs. It's still doing good, and then I ended up in our inter squad scrimmage that we always do at the end of camp. It up hurt my knee, having a slight ACL sprain, so I missed 2 to 3 weeks. Came back. Good thing about D3, which again I know we'll get into, is you get kind of like a B team, like you would like have a JV team on normal high school staff. So I got to play some of those games. Ended up re-hurting myself again, getting used to the running, the getting hit. So that first year was definitely, not a tough transition, but a learning process. So that physically, it was a lot to learn. And then as the years gone by, I got used to how to take care of myself, the different, things you could do after a practice, the different things you should eat after a practice, the different things you need, I never wanted to live in the training room, but tried to, be as familiar with it to take care of my body as I could. And then again, like we talked about, the mental side is I dove deep. I had the offense down within the first, usually you're installing the entire offense within the first 5 days. I had it pretty much all down.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's where, some of the guys in my class, Joe McNally, I think we were the only two that ended up making it all the way through from the receiver group. So that they'd ask me questions because I was nailing it down, just studying every little piece of it. This is what we're doing today. Master it. Next day, completely different set of installs. So mentally, that helped me out. If I was going through it, learning it mentally and physically at the same time, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. But and that's a good trick for any person going into college. And learning it now, teaching our guys, we've gone through a coaching change. So all of our guys are learning a completely new offense. So, it's kind of showing them, hey, this is how it's going to be, 2-3 years when you're ready to go off to college, boom, you're thrown into a new thing. They're doing it all now. So that's kind of really how it was, just, the transition. Yeah. That first year was a good learning year for me. And then into the off season, we had a good off season program, and then I was able to kind of just keep moving up, through my getting 1% better every day. So yeah, that's really kind of how it was for me into that transition.
I kind of felt the same way when I was transitioning from coaching quarterbacks to coaching receivers. And I felt like I had week 2 camp brain, because you play quarterback and you think you know how to coach a receiver up, because when you're playing quarterback, you just naturally are kind of working with receivers. Hey, I kind of want this route this way. Hey, I might fit it this way, or hey, this is my read. So this is, when I'm kind of expecting you to be open. But it's that technique side of things. That was when I first got the job at Simpson coaching receivers. Man, I was spinning, because I would get questions about, hey, should I use this release? Should I, I remember hopping on the phone with you at one point and talking releases and talking, how to get off a hard jam versus a soft jam. What's the difference there? Like for me, I always just, like, as a quarterback, I saw space and I knew, hey, just try to get to your spot as fast as humanly possible. And so I kind of took the same approach to coaching receivers. And at times, probably sacrifice some of those kids' development at times, because, they would ask me about a release. And I'm like, dude, I have no idea what that even is called. But all I'm going to tell you is try to get to your spot as fast as humanly possible. And that's what I felt like, as, one of your quarterbacks throughout your career. I always felt like you were one of those guys that was going to be on time. You're always going to be on time, and at the same time being quarterback friendly. And I always felt like you had such a good ability of showing your eyes to the quarterback when you're ready for the ball, essentially, because you were so good at those option routes. And I think that partly was because of your experience playing quarterback, because you just knew where to sit in those zones and sit in that space. And I don't know about you, but when I was playing quarterback, when I saw a receiver's eyes and we locked eyes together, I felt like he knows he's open. I know he's open. He's ready for the ball. I'm ready to give him the ball. And I think that is just something that I think all young receivers can learn to do, is get to your spot as fast as possible, keep moving, and then get your eyes to the quarterback as soon as you possibly can. But
Absolutely.
so let's talk about, the experience of playing D3 football, because, this is a big part of what I want to accomplish on this show, is really talk about why it is so special. And I feel like me playing D3 football is an experience that I would not trade for the world. I had some D2 opportunities, had an FCS opportunity as well, but man, as I look back at it, the Division 3 experience really allowed me to learn a lot about myself. And you feel pressure, of course, always being a student athlete and being an athlete in general, but I feel like it really gave me the opportunity to, like I said, learn who I was as a human being as well. And then also focus on, the classroom and your relationships outside of, the field. What was playing Division 3 football like for you, and why was it such an impactful experience?
To me, so like I've been growing up in a big town, going to a big high school, playing against other big high schools. To me, it felt very much like high school, but at another speed with and more grown men. Obviously, when you're playing seniors and juniors, dudes who are about to go, whether D3 guys still go on to play against a couple guys. I got to go get camp opportunities with different NFL programs, Canadian programs, some UFL guys. But that's the best I could describe it for me. It's just because, quite frankly, my high school was bigger than Simpson. So Saturdays felt like it was a Friday night. It
Right.
wasn't so we had some games at night, but it felt like, again, you talk about your football players, you're still kind of, it sucks to say the kind of the big dogs on campus. You still got that feel of it. But
Right.
again, it's not like you're, playing at Alabama and you don't have to go to class. For Cardell Jones said it right. We're not here to go play school, right? Simpson, you're going to school. You're doing that stuff. So you've got the
Right.
weekly mental breakdown of going to an 8 a.m. Communications class. You've got the mental side of after that is done, you go to a 1 o'clock lift. You go to the meetings. You go to this. You get done at 7:30 at night. You got to get schoolwork done. You got to watch film about the team you're playing. You got to know, you got to know what you're doing in class the next day. You got to know what's happening on Saturday. So that for me, that's the best way I could describe it. And getting to play against and with guys that mostly built out of Iowa is what our team was. So guys like yourself who played at a little bit smaller of a high school, we had kids who had 33 kids on their team, you know, and it was kind of a big process for them. I was like, okay, well, they do things a little bit different. They understand things a little bit different. So getting to see some of that side of it was really cool. And then just like you said, the relationships of it, building it on and off the field with your teammates, your coaches, and really the way I describe D3 is you're playing it for the love of the game. You're not doing it if you play well enough and you have got the right measurables. You could, leagues will find you, but you're out there doing it for the love of the game. And same thing goes with the coaches. You're getting top level coaching of dudes who are going through the work, man. They're grinding just as much as you are, because again, they're not making $5 million a year like most head coaches, most offensive coordinators, most receivers coaches at a Division 1 level. So they're putting in the work just as much as you are. So
Hmm.
when you're playing D3, it's all because you love the game.
Yeah. You hit it. So you hit it right on the head. And I had a very similar experience. And that's why I believe that D3 is one of the purest forms of athletics you can possibly get, because nobody's really doing it for NIL, Mary Hardin Baylor. You might have some opportunities, but I know they have a collective, but regardless, you see some schools that have it, but like, I tell you what, a Simpson, as a, that being my last coaching stop, it was, I mean, you get kids because they love it. You don't get kids because of money or opportunity to play in the NFL. Like you said, there's chances. Like you see guys, you know, you see 5 guys pop a year that get a mini camp invite, and typically those guys are from 4 different schools in our in our division, but you just don't see it very much. But it's still possible. But let's shift gears just a little bit. Now you're a coach, and what do you remember about being, a first time coach, especially a young coach? It can be really difficult. What do you think, you know, why do you think it's so important to continue to learn the game and expanding your knowledge and never settling for, oh, yeah, I did this in high school, or I did this, in college? Why do you think it's so important to learn your game, and how do you feel like you've continued to learn throughout, you're still a young coach, but throughout your coaching career so far?
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, I was hit the ground running. I graduated like May 2nd, May 4th. We were doing summer stuff and getting ready to go do 7-on-7s against other schools. So I'm going from finishing, graduating, finishing my last little bits of stuff. Now I'm learning a new offense. So, and then the good thing about it is offense we ran when I first got there was very similar to what we were running at Simpson.
Mhm.
So I go in, the first thing I do, they get me in a huddle, they've got it all broken down, boom, I'm taking my notes. Like, this is how, my quarterbacks need to be on time, this footwork, this, that, reading this guy, and then just applying it to the knowledge I already had. And like you said, and I'll get into it a little bit here in a second, but, and then June rolled around, and our head coach, who was our play caller at the time, who's coaching quarterbacks over at another school right now, he was gone all summer. So I'm learning this offense, and a month later, I'm calling the offense out at 7-on-7s because I'm the pass game coordinator. So,
Mhm.
it was kind of a put your feet to the fire type thing. And to me, really, I felt like it came very natural. Like, I was nervous at first, but once I started doing it, I was like, okay, I've got this thing. Like, whatever it is, I feel like I have it. Just the knowledge I had of both of the skill positions, the quarterback position, and then offensive line, which I would dive into later as I kept working. That's another thing is I was strictly skill based, learning quarterback, receiver, tight end. Now I'm going from I gotta learn offensive line techniques. I gotta learn how they're blocking a certain technique on inside zone, outside zone, power read. I need to know why we need to call a certain our quarterbacks or need to check a certain protection at the line based off of play call, based off of defensive alignment, based off of not even just personnel that the other team might have. So that was the biggest learning process for me my first year, is getting my quarterbacks to understand what protections we need to be in. And now moving forward, like, so I was at a coach's clinic 2 weekends ago, and we had, Dillingham was there. A bunch of his staff did a bunch of presentations. He did a presentation. Kurt Warner was there. Now, unfortunately, a lot of us coaches have big egos. I have a big ego. Like, I think my shit doesn't stink at times. But I try to take as much out of that as I can. And that's why I really have immense respect for, Dillingham and his staff over at Arizona State. Is, man, they're so welcoming. Even they want to learn. They want to learn from, hey, what are you doing with your quarterbacks?
Mhm.
They're trying to recruit our guys, obviously, but what are you doing with your guys? And they're showing us different drills that they do, and I might take that, and they're sitting there, they're talking to us like, hey, if you want to hit us up at any point, come over to Tempe. We'll talk different stuff. I'm like, that's awesome, because that doesn't just like it's building coaching in the area, which is awesome. But, and again, it's trying to get our kids to push them to Arizona State, which, I feel like I'd like to do just because of the way things went for them last year and the way that their trajectory is going. So, man, I just try to go into every single day. Like I said, learning a new offense right now, a lot of the same stuff, just different calls, different ways to do it. It's just that typical coaches talk, get 1% better every day, right? I mean, once we started learning this offense 6 weeks ago, man, every single install, we don't even go, we just go do it on the field. I'd go home, write down everything we did, draw it up, boom, this is how we did it, this is the formations we learned, and then the next week doing the same thing all over again and just studying it. That way I could, the best way to be a coach is mastering it so you could teach it. And I felt like I've gotten to the point where I've mastered this offense now. So that's the biggest thing. And you're never going to have anything mastered. You're always going to learn something new, whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly. So my big thing is, the best thing, these clinics, is I try to get every single presentation. I try to take one thing out of every presentation.
Right.
I'm always taking notes. I got a notebook from that weekend. It's a 5-page long of me just taking notes on certain things that, even there's Coach Colin Thomas over at Liberty who's now turned themselves into a perennial,
Whew.
powerhouse. Won the last 2 Open Division State Championships. He did presentations just based off of practice planning. I'm sitting there just how they're planning a practice, how they're, throughout the week checking their quarterback's arms. Check your quarterback's arms throughout practice, how they're doing certain things to prepare for, obviously, an off-season summer games. I'm taking notes and trying to figure out what best I could do, to help get our guys to where they want to be.
Let's talk about that transition a little bit. I can imagine, whenever you're going through, a coaching change, it's always, you're like, do I have a job? Am I gonna have to go find something new? What was that process like? I'm sure it was stressful at the time, but talk a little bit about getting that job that you have now and, remaining on staff, at such a great high school.
Yeah, like you said, it's a stressful process. Not so much for the kids. There's a little bit of stress going into it because you want to know who's going to be your coach. But at high school, obviously, you're going to show up and play no matter what. As a coach, right? You have the understanding that hey, everyone's going to want their dudes with them. So Coach Ty Wisdom, who came over from Millard South in Nebraska, won a state championship out there, ended up getting the job. And I felt like his transition was very smooth. He sat down, he did interviews with everybody. I was one of them. And then, a couple weeks later, just sitting waiting for a call, see if, what he wanted me to do, where he wanted me, and through the process, obviously, other schools are putting feelers out. Hey, would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah, I'll sit and wait. And I'll let you know in a couple weeks. But I ended up luckily getting the call from Coach Wiz, asking me to come be the quarterbacks coach at the varsity level, which was a nice thing to hear. Then after that, it's like, all right, what's next? What do we got to do to start jumping into this thing? It's the same everywhere. Like college, it's a little bit more elevated because dudes are leaving every year, right? Just whether it's jumping to bigger schools, getting fired, right? It's a true business, but don't get it wrong. It's become a pretty big business out here. I mean, I think right now I saw a tweet the other day from an account that said 53 jobs opened in the Arizona high school
Wow,
coaching world for head coaches. It's still
that's
climbing
crazy.
because things are opening every day. Last year, I think it was at 71. I'm not just so in the Arizona bubble. I like to look out at what jobs are opening in Nebraska, what jobs are opening in Iowa. That'd be nice to get to once I've kind of settled myself in a nice head coaching job at some point to maybe find a program out there and try to change something out there. But yeah, it's a stressful process for sure. Really, it's a lot of just sitting and waiting and hoping that you left a good enough impression. And I was lucky enough to leave a really good impression on the last coach, Coach Rick Garrettson, who I have immense respect for. So I got a lot of good recommendations that got put out for me and that allowed me to stay on staff. So yeah, it was a tough, I'd say, month until I got that call pretty much.
We're both offensive guys, of course. How do you feel like this system compares to others you've been a part of? As far as terminology, are you keeping the same terminology? Kind of going more to the head coach's terminology? I feel like I jumped offenses every single year when I was, obviously high school, transitioning to college, learn a new system, new terminology. And then, my sophomore year, your junior year, we switched the offense at Simpson, new terminology, same, same exact offense, same coordinator, new calls. I had the same calls for 3 years. And then I went up to River Falls, new calls, new ways to do things. And then you go to, then I go back to Simpson. There's a new staff, new coordinator, new terminology, new calls. But you seeing any carryover, and what's that been like?
I'd say it's very different, right? So our coach Wiz he's an offensive guy, so he's obviously bringing over his offense, which he's ran since he's become a coach. All of it's his terminology. And quite frankly, the terminology is very close to how it was when I was at Simpson, so
Okay.
it's not too much of a transition, but it's still going from one thing to another. The way he views certain plays is going to have their favorite set of plays they like to run. Coach Carpenter, who was our offensive coordinator, who I worked closely with the last 2 years, he had his certain ways of how he liked to do things, run plays he liked. Now it's Coach Wiz has certain ways he likes to do certain plays. They're the same concepts, just different ways to run them, different ways to read them. So it is very much a different offense. To call it a very basic offense of what we're doing now, which is nice because it's good for kids to boom, get the basics down. Now we could go fast. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I really like the offense. We're all predicated on every offense wants to have high tempo, but it's, high tempo and getting plays in quick, getting the quarterbacks to quick boom, see the defense, boom, snap the ball, let's go,
Mm-hmm.
which is good, which has a lot of basics to it. Now, again, we're still in the basics process of learning it all. We'll have different wrinkles and stuff that we'll end up getting into, but I really like the basics of what it is now. I liked what the old stuff was too. I like to think when, I get to kind of take my own ship. I'm going to take pieces of this, pieces of that, pieces when I was at Simpson, pieces when I was at Hamilton, which is, again, never leave a stone unturned as you're going through the process. Never burn a bridge is a good thing to learn as a young coach. But yeah, it's very different. But, offense is offense at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. It always, you go to different places, you talk to different people. At the end of the day, we're all running the same stuff. Like that, that's a statement that I will live by. But it's just getting in and out of it in different ways. I mean, at River Falls, unbelievably fast. But the thing about going fast is a lot of people just assume going fast means that we're so simple that we're predictable. But I see going fast and being simple as a way to master. It's the quote, "I fear the man that has practiced one punch 1,000 times versus a man that's practiced 1,000 punches once." Like that's how I feel about going fast and being simple. You can really get stuff down. Like when I first got to River Falls, it's like, goodness sakes, we're running like some of the same plays over and over again. But you're damn sure I got good at those plays. I mean, those plays that I ran, like, and especially in the course of a fall camp period, when you're running 30 plays a set versus, other places I've been where we're running 15 plays a set, you really get good at those plays, even as a backup. And that was one of the crazy things that I found when I, went from Simpson to River Falls and then back to Simpson is as a backup at Simpson, I got, let's see, I would get 4 reps per team period essentially. And then at River Falls, back up again, and then of course once you're the starter, you get more. But as a backup per team period, I was getting like 15 reps a set. And I was sharing that with another quarterback. You get a lot more plays in, which definitely helps the development of your players for sure. But one thing that I think is so interesting to think about is there's 2 schools of thought when trying to find coaching jobs and going from place to place. Some decide to stay in one place for a long time, bloom where you're planted per se. And then you see some that jump from job to job to job. I see value in both. When I was trying to make the coaching climb, I thought jumping from job to job was going to be my thing. You've moved up the ranks within your school. How valuable do you think it is to stay in a school, build some loyalty up, and continue to be where you are?
Yeah, so I've always, like, as you know, like when I was at Hamilton, had a couple chances to transfer elsewhere, could transfer to go be a full-time starter somewhere, could have done it, didn't want to. Same thing with Simpson, kind of could have probably went somewhere to have a much bigger, like I had a big role, but like, kind of a true receiver one role, could have done that, didn't want to. And now it's been very similar, here at Chandler's, had opportunities to maybe go elsewhere. But I've always, like you said, kind of be where your feet are planted for right now. And that's not like I had a couple interviews for some offensive coordinator jobs at smaller schools over this whole process in December. Got a couple of the offers, but again, I was like, you know what? I think it's best for my development if I continue to learn. I don't want to, I don't want to throw myself into the fire and boom, it doesn't work. Now you're viewed as, okay, well, you're trying to get another job, and you were part of an offense that was, it was ranked last in your district. So I've been a big believer in just, I kind of that loyalty part. Again, building a new set of loyalty, still in the same spot, which has been nice, which is still has the familiarity of being at Chandler. It's good because sometimes, some of the new guys will ask me questions, not about the offense, just because they've been with Ty before, but just kind of about Chandler in general, how it works. So that's been nice to kind of being that not backbone, but kind of that guy that they can kind of ask about certain things about the players. A lot of these players are all new for him. All these guys, have been mine for 4 years. They started with me as freshmen, and we all kind of worked up together. So that's been nice. But yeah, and again, like when I go through these interviews, I like to be as upfront as possible. I like to build those connections, and I really did the interviews just to get a feel for the interview process. But I built a lot of good connections through that interview process, and so now I've kind of got connections here, there, connections of former coaches that are at Chandler that are now at other schools. So now it's kind of like a big tree that I have that I could tap into if someday down the line I end up moving on. I don't see it, in the near future, but I have those different connections that I could use while still kind of, hey, any person's gonna, whether you're, working at Apple, you're working at McDonald's, if you're there for 5-10 years, you go for another job interview, they're gonna be like, oh wow, you stayed there for 5 to 10 years. That they're gonna think that that's pretty cool. They're gonna love that commitment, even when times are tough, kind of like last year was. They're gonna love that commitment, that you're sticking strong and you're gonna stand in the barrel and be ready to fight.
Let's talk about your approach to coaching quarterbacks. My approach to how a quarterback should be coached has changed a lot over the years because I think long time ago, maybe, I think there was a big emphasis on really, you know, changing the arm angle, changing the arm path, changing mechanics, doing everything you can to get the elbow above the shoulder and all that, BS. But I think the approach, and that's how I felt too. But I think the approach really has kind of gone to the kid's going to throw it how he's going to throw it. And do you feel that way when it comes to coaching kids mechanic? Because I'm much more of a get your feet right, make sure you're on time, and let that thing rip. I'm not don't think too much about how you're throwing it because you've thrown it a million times before. Just like you're doing it right now, it's going to be pretty hard to break it.
Yeah, I 100%. Like my time, I think that I'm going on my fourth year. I don't think in a practice I've ever covered mechanics, like arm mechanics. Going back to kind of what you said, like if I'm going to change something, it's going to be about your lower half.
Right.
Okay, now again, if it's something like where my biggest thing is my biggest thing for a quarterback, in my opinion, is just being consistently accurate. If you could do that, whatever your throwing motion is, perfect. Now let's control your lower half, be on time there, get it tied in with your arm, get it tied in with your eyes. Then we're going to cover that. I'm going to dive big time into schematics with a lot of our quarterbacks, drills, footwork wise in the pocket, footwork wise through a progression. So that's really what I'm covering. Now I do training on the side with young quarterbacks. I'd say about 8 to 13 range is where I really cover kind of, everyone's got, I call it the tennis serve throw, or everyone likes this new rotational throwing. I try to be a mix of both. I don't like being too rotational down low. I don't like being too over the top. I like being right in the middle. So I'll cover that with, young quarterback trainees. But when I'm coaching quarterbacks at a school, I'm strictly, let's focus on getting better with our lower half. Let's focus on being better with our mind, understanding the plays. A quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator play call, you got to be a direct line to the quarterback and making sure, because they're the direct line to you.
There's also no time. I mean, you
Yeah.
get those kids for 15 minutes of Indy and you're moving on. The exact age range that you mentioned, below 13, that's the perfect time to start messing with arm angles because they're just starting to be able to grip a Wilson GST right. You know what I mean? Is I always felt like, and this is like super nerdy quarterback science shit, but I always felt like if you can get the elbow on a vertical path or in an outward trajectory, then you're going to be okay. Because if once you release the ball and your elbow is pointed down, that's exactly where that ball is going to go. But no matter if you're throwing like 3/4, like if you're like a full sidearm or if you're in a 3/4, or even if you're all the way up by your ear, as long as that elbow is going that way, you're going to be okay. And that's like I said, some nerdy quarterback science stuff, but that's the thing that I didn't figure out until like I was a coach, and you start trying to figure out what's wrong with the kid, and I was like, oh shit, I do that. If you're thinking about your mechanics while you're trying to play football, you're so far behind. I had Scott on the show last week. He sees a lot of high school kids getting burnt out right now because of how many sports they're involved in or how many different activities they're involved in. He was talking about how he's coaching women's basketball or girls basketball right now in high school. And he's got a girl that comes to basketball practice and then has to leave a little early from basketball practice to go to, or she's got to leave basketball practice early to go to softball, like hitting at night, and then she's got swimming the next day. But I feel like, I want to hear your take on this. Do you see a lot more specialization in Arizona? Do you, how do you feel about specialization or just playing a bunch of sports? And what would be, your preference?
So at Chandler, we always try to push our kids to go run track, like go be away from us for a little bit, run track, get faster. We try to do all of our skill guys, even some of our linemen maybe get to do throwing or do maybe even a track event, wrestling. But man, we are so big that like it's kind of like, oh, we got a set group of basketball players and they specialize in that. We got a set group
Yeah.
of baseball players and they
Yep.
specialize in that. That track is track in my opinion. Like if you're fast, go run track.
Yep.
Go get
Totally.
better at that. Get your form right. Get the conditioning down. One of our DBs coach, our former assistant head coach and running backs coach, they're our track coaches. They're obviously seeing those dudes every day, so they know they're working. So we know that they go off and run track. Fantastic. The big one for Arizona, I don't know if it's as big in Iowa, but like the 7-on-7 scene, it's
Yeah.
ginormous down here. It's a three-headed dragon down here. You got kids playing on travel teams, going out every weekend playing 7 games on a Saturday, and then some tournaments do 2 days. So the quarterback wise, they're throwing, you know, 250 footballs on a Saturday, and now they're coming back on Monday and having to come through, do an install, do lifting. So that's the big one. I used to, when I was a freshman coach, I would do like, we'd have our eighth graders do a team and we just introduce our offense and have them go out there on a tournament on Saturday. But it's huge in the high school, to find one of those big teams to try and go play in San Diego. There's big tournaments out here that happen every other weekend, it feels like. But to go play in Las Vegas, and it, I'm not this, like, I'm not going to be one of those old, like, I'm not gonna say it's terrible, but like it's tough. It's almost like travel baseball in my opinion,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
Which is
I
tough
would
to
have
get.
ate that. I would have ate that up if I was growing up with that. I would have been on. Like
Yeah,
I.
it wasn't even big when I was in high school. Like
Yeah.
it's grown. Like there was like one team when I was in high school, and Bryce Perkins played for it. Travis Lockhart, who was at Hamilton, played for, like, all the big guys. Ended up playing on to go play elsewhere. So it wasn't even big when I was in high school, and that doesn't feel like that long ago. But now it's huge. Like every kid is like, oh, I've got a tournament this weekend to go play at.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worked its way up from the south a little bit. You definitely don't see. If you look outside right now, there's a blizzard, and so there's not a lot of, 7-on-7 tournaments going on right now. I don't know how many like club teams there are. I know high schools in the summer do it a bunch, and it's grown more and more over the years. But yeah, it's that is I would have ate that up. I would have loved that.
Yeah, we do that over the summer too. Like with U of A, ASU, we go up to NAU too. We're going back to San Diego State this year to go out to San Diego, have a nice little trip, and but we're doing our offense. We're
Right.
preparing the offenses. These guys are running. They're taking the ball off the tee. The quarterback stands there, looks at every receiver to see if he's open, throws it or not. And then they've got blitzes. Apparently, you can hand the ball off. I'm like, it got to be a little bit too much for me to continue doing it. So I haven't done it at all this year, and it's felt really nice. But again, it goes to, like I said, travel baseball. Like you see all these Tommy John injuries
Seriously.
from young pitchers, and like, well, you played travel baseball every weekend. You did obviously your high school stuff. Now, you've thrown the ball over 1 million times before you've even gotten to the big leagues. So it to me, it takes a big toll, especially quarterbacking wise. Like, I want you throwing the football, but I don't want you throwing the football that much.
Right. Do you see the it's got to be hard with the schemes. Like of course they have coaches like calling plays for these 7-on-7 teams. Do you ever get a kid that's like, "Coach, we did this in my 7-on-7 league." I'd probably slap a kid if he told me that. I'd be like, "Yeah, you did it wearing underwear and a sissy helmet. Like this is big leagues, buddy."
Yeah. So there's actually a funny story. My quarterback, and so I was an offensive coordinator at freshman last year, my first year play calling, and we're in a 2-minute drill, and we're in empty the entire time. And I have a play called everyone's favorite Haas wide juke. I've got that called. My quarterback catch it and does a now right to what the seam is. But luckily enough, the kid that he threw it to played 7-on-7 with him over the spring, and it caught him like, what the are they doing, man? And then I called the same play. So I called again because I'm trying to get him to rip the hitch because they're playing 10 yards off. They do it again. This time the defense is like, yeah, you're not just going to catch it and throw it to a guy walking off the line on a seam. They do it, almost gets picked off. They come to the sideline like, what the hell was that? Well, we did it in sevens. I'm like, bro, I literally like, you got to get away from me right now because that's my fun. That's probably was where I drew the line. I'm like, I'm not doing this at 7-on-7 stuff anymore. But yeah, you get the, oh, well, we did this with my sevens team. Like, okay, put 6, or not 6, put 5 300-pound linemen in front of you, put 4 guys rushing you. Now do that in 7-on-7. Yeah, now it's a little, right?
I wish they did that in 7-on-7. I wish you had to have a rush, or at least I wish there was something. But yeah, your ability to maneuver the pocket, like I feel you kind of stunt your growth a little bit when you're playing sevens because you can just sit back there, nobody's rushing me, and I'm sure like sevens coaches out there will probably be like, "Oh no, we have a timer, or we have a." No, you don't. You're ripping a fade ball after 10 seconds of sitting there. But anyways,
it creates
if you
bad
can tell, we're kind of sounding like old timers right now.
Yeah.
With
The big thing is it just like for me, it creates a lot of bad habits with your footwork and your drops. You know, you're taking the ball off the tee and you're not even dropping. You're just boom scanning. You're not going through real progressions, and you see it. Once you get to summer, you're having to beat out a lot of this bad habits that they're building in the sevens world. Luckily, my 2 guys haven't done much sevens right now, which is nice. So we've been able to hone in on our drop backs, focusing on that stuff. But yeah, it's a lot of bad habits that, once you get them back, you got to recorrect that instead of maybe going a little deeper into your playbook that you should be.
Yeah. How do you teach housewide juke?
Just in like progression
Yeah,
wise.
like, or how do you progression it? What are you telling them to look at? As we're getting into it.
Yeah, I try to make it as easy as possible. I make my hitches my alerts, right? So if they're giving you a hitch, don't even worry about it. Catch, rip it.
Do you convert it?
Yeah, we would convert it at the freshman level if they press. Naturally, I'm like, okay, if they press, I don't necessarily want you throwing that just because there's a couple other high percentage things you could probably get to later in your progression. So if they're pressing, they're playing at under 5, that basic cover 2 or soft man. I'm like, okay, now we could come off of that. Now we could read kind of seam, and then I treat the option route. I would always tell our guys, right, because that was my route. Just be patient with it. Let it set up. You're gonna be the third progression most likely. Let it develop. Find your zone, or if it's man, work your route the way you need to. Then the quarterback will get to you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we would convert it. Sometimes we'd have tags where we just turn slot fades and just automatic hitches, no conversions. But yeah, I made it the most basic one. Just boom, alert hitches, take it. If not, seam, back down to your option.
What's your favorite way to run it?
Oh, we ran it a couple different ways. I was a big when I did my end of the year analysis, I motioned 85% of the time.
Mm.
And
the option guy.
What's up?
The option man.
Just anybody. Like
anybody. Nice.
I would be in a set. I'd motion a guy over. Sometime I'd motion him over to number 2 and make him the seam, just to get guys to bump and lose track of the option. I'd motion the option guy. I'd motion the running back from the backfield. I'd motion a receiver from the backfield into the spot. So I think we scored on it this way a couple of times. The way I mentioned is starting in, just a basic empty 3 receivers one side, 2 the other. My running back was the weak side slot. So he was the number 2. I'd say cut your split down, motion a guy over into the number 2 spot. Now my running back was the number 3 who's going to run the option because he's the strong side. Now that guy's running the seam at the freshman level, no one really bumps to anything. So boom, the seam would either pop open to the strength or they'd leave the option route to just sit there and be wide open. So we scored on that 3 times. Once against Hamilton at the end of the year was our first touchdown of the game. We ended up hitting on it. So yeah, that was probably my favorite way to run it last year. sure there'll be other ways that there's actually a way that I wanted to run it that you learn as when you become a first time play caller. You're like, yeah, I ran a lot of stuff, but then I got to the end of the year, it's like, man, I didn't run that. I didn't run this. I didn't run that. And we practiced them, but we never ran them. So it's in the back pocket. And yeah, so that's probably my favorite way that we ran it last year.
Like you said, I feel like it's such a comfort play for a quarterback. Simple reads, don't really have to think too much about it. Let's talk a little bit about, the growth of women's flag football. We haven't really seen that in Iowa too much. How have you seen it, growing in Arizona?
Yeah, it's huge here now. Like, so when it started a little bit when I was in high school. So all the Chandler schools ended up creating one team, and they play kind of it's like a district team, and they go play other district teams, like a Mesa district. Now it's huge. Like when I first got into coaching in 22, Chandler had a team, Hamilton had a team, Perry, a bunch of schools had their own teams. They'd play in the spring. Okay, but it also wasn't AIA, which is, Arizona Interscholastic Association or whatever they call it. It wasn't sanctioned by what all the other sports like basketball, football are sanctioned by. So they were playing in the spring. They were making their own schedules. They had, some form of higher body that would kind of set their. Then I think it was that after my first year, they ended up sanctioning it as, a AI sanctioned event. So now they started playing in the fall. They played Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes there's like a scheduling thing where like JV has to play after. They have to play after our JV team. But it's huge, man. They're playing some big time ball down here. So I train 3 10U girls flag football teams, that are in the Valley. One actually just won a tournament, gets to go to Canton, Ohio in July to go play in one of those big tournaments. So it's grown big time down here. It's huge in California. I know that. I know it's big in Texas too. I saw the Vikings are working with something to try to get something very similar, like a sanctioned, girls flag league, so that they can start doing that. But it's huge, and like going back to the, try to learn something new. Like I played flag football for one season when I was 5 years old. Never played it again after that.
Yeah.
So, like learning the flag game is completely different. They've got I think it's 5-on-5. So learning the way they do things, plays, different movements they do to try to avoid getting their flag pulled, different drills that I could work on them with to say, hey, let's get better at this, while still kind of adding high level coach at a high level school, trying to apply high level techniques to them. But it's huge. It's kind of similar to the 7-on-7 down here at the lower levels.
Yeah.
Even the high school girls do the tournaments on the weekends too. But like they do travel teams. They go Florida, Canton, like I talked about in July. They go to California. They play big
Is it
tournaments.
to the varsity level yet?
Yeah.
Wow.
We've been at the varsity level for a long time. Like
That's crazy. That's awesome.
Hamilton.
That's so cool. I
Yeah,
love growing the game.
yeah, absolutely. Hamilton won it all last year. Actually, a girl I used to train at quarterback was the starting quarterback there. She threw like 50 some touchdowns or something like that. It was crazy.
Damn.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Like they got state championship weekends.
Wow.
They
Are a
play
lot of those girls, is that the only sport they're playing? Or are they playing, are we having specialization for
some.
girls
Yeah,
flag football?
some of them do. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
you
That's so cool.
Arizona State has a girls flag team. Again, and it's obviously not sanctioned by the
NCAA, right.
NCAA, but they've got a flag team that they give scholarships out for. And I know a
Wow.
lot of other schools around the country have kind of done the same thing. So yeah, it's grown big time down here. It's a big thing. And it's been fun to learn, quite honestly, the different levels to it, the way they do things.
How do you see the future of college football going? What do you think it looks like in 10 years? Do you think small college football is, not a thing? Or do you think the big time schools are going to split off and be their own super conference? How do without being super, you know, qualified to talk about it because we're not, but how do you see it shaping up?
To me, yeah, I could see the super conference like you talked about. I mean, you already saw it a little bit this year. Like teams weren't as worried to lose 2 games, so they're playing a
Yeah.
little bit harder schedules, right? You got the team who won it all lost 2 games, one to Oregon, one to Michigan, right? They ended up going on winning it all. So there's not that, let's schedule, the Citadel week 1, week 2.
Right.
Now they're getting into a little. Now again, you got the Big Ten had its new realignment last year. SEC had its new realignment. It'd be interesting. Obviously, to me, it has to have a little bit more of a governing body, like the way the NFL obviously has divisions,
Yes.
they have conference.
We need
But
Saban as the commish.
yeah, which
We
would
need
be
a commissioner of
yeah,
some kind.
yeah. The amount of teams there are, it'd be really hard. So maybe like it sucks. Maybe the guys you identify as the top teams, or maybe like you look at the way European soccer is ran, right? You got obviously your top league, and then if you suck, you move down. If you win, if you're the second
I'm a
tier,
big
you move
fan of that.
that top one. Who knows where it's gonna go? Obviously, the way I look at college now is just the way to get our guys recruited.
Right, right. That's why I think it's an interesting. I think you have an interesting perspective, even though you're not directly involved with coaching or anything like that. I think it's just interesting to see how your guys are responding to it. Like when they're getting recruited, it's like, well, I'm thinking about choosing between maybe a SCS program versus an FBS program. Well, shoot, FCS program might not be Division 1 really anymore. Well, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like. I didn't think we were ever going to have a transfer portal as belligerent as the one we have now. I didn't think players were ever going to get paid. No, they're getting paid as a as a worker. They're getting paid as a like a professor would. So it's not like a professor like next that, but it's I never thought we would get to where we are, and I guess we're here.
Yeah, and like for me, like it's tough to give as much guidance to our guys as possible. We got a guy when Will our quarterback now, Will Menzel, he's got a couple really good offers right now. But talking to him every day, I'm like, man, you just make sure you're paying attention to everything that they're doing, right? The
Yeah.
big thing, especially at the quarterback position, every school is looking to bring a transfer in. They want a guy who's been in a program before, they want a guy who's played. So as a young guy, a guy who's getting recruited, you got to pay attention to all that. You got to, who are they bringing in the transfer portal? What other quarterbacks are they offering? Committable offers. So it's been an interesting process going through that now. We'll see what it looks like in a couple years. Hopefully it gets a little, because again, we're still very in the infancy process of it. I feel like hopefully it kind of gets a little bit more developed. Obviously, walk-ons are no longer a thing. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look at now that there's no walk-ons. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Last question before we get into some segments here at the end. Um, why do you think football is the greatest sport ever created?
It's the greatest sport ever created because I mean I've always had this belief that it takes a full team, not just offense, not just defense, not just quarterback. You need your special teams. You need your looking at the college side. You need your offensive analyst on his game. You need your offensive coordinator obviously on his game. You need every single piece of it, and you need to all be on the same page. You all working towards the same direction. You look at basketball, right? You got 5 guys on the court. One guy could take over and win a game. Now, you probably need a little bit more of that to win a championship. Absolutely. Maybe not so much these days, right? You're getting trades, building three-man super teams. But football, you need your left tackle. If he doesn't do his job and all 10 other guys do their job, you're screwed. There's one play that's out the window, and it could be a different guy on the next play. It could be your receiver busts a route, or misses a block on a run play. Quarterback misses a read. It's the big one because if your mistakes are magnified times 10 more than a lot of other positions, but again, your successes are also magnified times 10. But you need your defense to be on their game. If they're not on their game and you score 45 and they score 46, you're screwed. If you're
Yeah.
offensively you score 7, they score 10. The defense did their job. You didn't do your job. If both offense and defense are humming, right? You're in a pretty good rhythm, and they take a kick return back to the house. The game just got flipped on its head, right?
Yeah.
A good example of that, I keep bringing up that clinic because Coach Charlie Ragle, who's the special teams coordinator at ASU, he did a good job of kind of breaking down that Peach Bowl, right? They had the big fake that they ran against Texas. They also had that big return that they gave up that kind of maybe flipped the game. That they don't have that big return, maybe they win the game. They don't have to go to overtime. So it's truly, you need every single person on your roster to be locked in to what you're doing.
Yeah. That's a very similar way I think. I just think, you have to have all 22 or all 11 doing their job at all times. And if one of them screws up, you're so screwed. So new to the Left Hash Call now is we have a couple segments that we're going to do here at the end. First one we're going to do is a Mount Rushmore, and we're both going to participate. Austin is going to do the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks that he has either played with or coached. And I bring this up because obviously we played together, but we're not going to name me. And then I am going to do Mount Rushmore of wide receivers that I have played with or coached, not naming Austin. So, Austin, go ahead. Let's hear your Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks you've either played with or coached.
I'll go to two I played with and two that I've coached. So I'll start with my junior year. I got to sit under this guy, Travis Lockhart. He actually came over from Chandler after his freshman year. Travis Lockhart ended up, he started in my junior year, so I got to learn a lot behind him. Had wicked arm talent. He was a smart kid. Ended up going to Colorado School of Mines, so he's obviously a smart kid, played quarterback there for a long time. I learned a lot from Travis. One of those guys, like, you really wanted him to go out on top, kind of winning a state championship. Ended up not being able to happen, just got bested in the playoffs by a good Centennial team. But Travis really, he helped my development mentally, I feel like. Helped me learn coverages a little bit more, learn the offense a little bit more, learn how to play off schedule a little bit more than I was already used to. So he was big in helping me in my development, trying to transition into that senior year. And then going with the guy we kind of already mentioned at the beginning of the show, Tyler Shuck. We got to play together. My senior year was his junior year. Ended up getting to go on to play at Oregon and Texas Tech. And then last year he was at Louisville. Had a really good season. I feel like at Louisville, just ran a really good time at the 40. He was a kid that I liked kind of working with. Kind of this is where I felt like my coaching journey kind of sparked a little bit, and then it kind of really sparked when I got to Simpson. But just kind of, hey, this is a process you should take. Helping him, hopefully giving him a little bits and pieces, hopefully that he was able to take daily. And now he's obviously going on to do really good things. Hopefully get drafted here in April to a good team, maybe get an opportunity the way Brock Purdy did. Yeah. So I'd say those are the two guys I played with. Played against a lot of really good guys. The list would be long if it was guys I played against.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I like that. We might have to revisit that in a later episode.
Yeah. So those two are the guys I played with. Now, coaching-wise, so my first year in 22, I still got to help out a little bit at varsity, be around it, little bits and pieces. My first year there was Dylan when he was here, Dylan Rayola. And I want to get all of it out of the air. Like that kid works harder than anyone. You see all the stuff people, obviously Twitter's Twitter, but that kid, he truly wants to be the best. I get what people like to say, but he wants to be the best. He wants to put in the work to be the best. And conversations we had, whether it's just sitting there watching a JV game, listen to him talk. He'd ask me questions. I'm a first year coach, and he'd ask me questions. Like, my funniest story with Dylan is we were sitting at a JV because his younger brother Dayton played on our JV team. He was a freshman, and we're sitting there, and he's just talking. He goes, "Yeah, well, Matt said that they like to do it like this." I'm like, Matt, who the hell is Matt? Who's he talking about? I'm like, Dylan, who you talking about, bro? He's like, Matt Stafford. I'm like, okay, dude, you can't just name drop Matt Stafford like that. Like, never had a conversation with him, but he's been around a lot of good quarterbacks. Obviously, he's trained with Mahomes. He trains with his trainer, obviously, Jeff Christensen. He's a really good kid, and I love to tell everyone who asks me about him. I give him glowing reviews just because I think he's going to be special as long as he keeps on pace and doesn't let all the outside noise creep in. He's going to be a special kid. And then, I won't use any kids I'm working with now. But after Dylan left, we had a kid, Blake Heffron, who ended up going on to play D3 ball. He's over at University of Dubuque right now.
Oh, nice.
And Blake reminded me a lot
conference, love it.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of how I was. Now he spun that thing, but he was a kid that, like, I would always tell him, like, dude, just keep being you because you're a winner, right? You just want to win, right? He was 5'10". Oh, he was really athletic. He actually, when Dylan came in, he ended up playing slot receiver for us. He was a punt returner too as well for us. And then Dylan ends up leaving, so we ended up transitioning back into quarterback and had a really good season with him again. Another kid you want to see go out on top. And again, kind of got bested by a good Highland team there in the first round of the Open Division playoffs. But Blake was a kid that he was okay throwing 5 passes a game and winning the game, or a game against Basher. If we didn't win, we lost 42-45. But he threw for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. He has the ability to do it, but he wants to win at the end of the day. So I'd say those are the 4 guys that I right now I would put on that list, and ever growing, right? We'll see what the next 10 years looks like. Probably someone new gets added to the list, but those are 4 really good quarterbacks. All obviously Arizona high school quarterbacks that have paved the way. And then again, like we talked about, the guys I played against the list.
Yeah, your list is a lot more crazy than my list as far as guys you played against. I'll get into my receivers. Honestly, this is really hard for me because I've played with and I've coached some really good players. My Mount Rushmore, of course, we're not including each other, but Sam Bartlett is one of those guys that he was injured a lot early in his career, comes back his senior year, absolutely shredded, completely changed his body, really, and he was an unbelievably smart player as well, and just incredibly tough. Had a sports hernia basically the entire second half of his senior year and broke the touchdown record for receiving touchdowns in a season. Captain of our team, really was kind of the enforcer a lot of times with our team at certain points. Just being one of those guys that'll just go up and get it. He was one of those guys. Second guy played with, his name is Jagger Reisman. I played with him at River Falls. Just an unbelievably, shifty kid. His ability to get in and out of breaks. We did a lot of choice routes with him, primarily a deep choice. And goodness sakes, one kid that I coached, but Noah Craycraft, I coached him this past year. He was a receiver at Simpson. He is just one of those kids that just wins. He's kind of a shit talker, and I love it about that kid. I remember he was a newcomer of the year. It was the first inaugural award being newcomer of the year in the conference. And I called him and I was like, "Hey man, congratulations." And he's like, "Oh man, do you think I got snubbed?" I was like, "What do you mean snubbed?" He's like, "Oh, I was second team all conference." I was like, "Dog, you're freshman. You're like 18 years old." He's like, "Nah, I should have been first team coach. I should have been offensive player of the year." He's one of those kids though that he'll talk his shit, but he'll back it up at the same time. Last kid by the name Mason Van Zeelen, he was wired differently, and he was one of those kids that just could win. And that's kind of the theme of all of mine is these guys just win, and it's something about having that dog in them that it doesn't matter what look they get. Played with a lot of great receivers. Joe McNally's another one. We both play with him. Moving into the second segment here, I call it the left hash draft, and we're going to take turns drafting things pertaining to a specific topic. Snake draft this thing, of course, and we'll do 4 rounds of this. So a topic, and I'm excited for this. The topic for today is going to be pregame meal locations. I'll give you the choice. You want it round? You want the snake, or you want first pick?
I'll do the snake. I feel
Okay, you'll do the snake.
Nowadays, it's going to be very different just being in 2 different areas.
Yeah, true.
I'll try to think some of the stuff that I would go to as a player, but yeah, my palate's a little bit different now that
true. It is a lot different. Well, okay, so I'll have first pick then, and I'm just gonna go with a goodie, and that is Pizza Ranch.
That's definitely for sure a good one.
It's a good first pick.
So we would go here every Thursday usually as a receiver room. So I'd probably go with Jethro's when I was playing.
Oh, that's a good one. That is. I guess I didn't think about. I was thinking about like as soon as you get on your way to the game, but I didn't even think about. That's good. No, you invented a new rule. But yeah,
I don't like eating very much before.
Yeah.
So I like
okay.
out. So we'd always do our pre-game meal as a position group, so we'd obviously all go different places. So we'd go to Jethro's just because it was it was buy one get one
I won't
wings.
get one. I'm going tomorrow night.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Pumped. No, Jethro, that's a hell of a pick. I'm very jealous of that pick.
Yeah,
Now, now we've entered a new realm of what I was originally thinking. So this is great.
yeah. Shoot, nowadays, like again, I don't eat much pregame. A lot of my
No,
eating,
we can do like position dinners too before. That's a good one.
I'd probably go in and out for
In-N-Out.
us down here. In and out's a big thing, so I'll probably say in and out.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I've only had In-N-Out once when I was down recruiting down there in Arizona. Had the animal style, of course. I mean, pretty elite. Hey, people say that the In-N-Out's overrated. People say what they want about In-N-Out, but it's the best fast food burger I've ever had. It's not even close.
It's like we talked about with Tempo. Is like if you just specialize in one thing, just specialize in one thing. They just specialize in burger. They don't do all this other stuff. They just specialize in one thing.
Yeah, and they make a hell of a burger, I will say. I mean, like if I had the choice between like McDonald's or Burger King and you go with all the specialties, I'm going with In-N-Out. As far as burgers that I've had, it's the best. But okay. Man, now that we've entered this new realm, now this is tough. I'm going to go with a Simpson favorite, which is Brick House Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Brick House Cafe? Just Brick House. Great pizza place over there in Indianola. Okay, and now sneaking over from my next pick, I'm gonna go with Culver's. Culver's, not. Is there Culver's down in Arizona?
There's one right across the street from. I don't go very much, but yeah, Culver's is a good one.
Yeah, of course. Especially going up to Wisconsin for a couple of years. I mean, the amount of Culver's that are in like a square mile is rather ridiculous. I've never seen, like, if you living in Iowa at the time, like in Oskaloosa, like when I was living in Oskaloosa, you had to drive 30 minutes to Pella to go to the nearest Culver's. But if you want to go Culver's in Wisconsin, you got to like go across the street. No matter where you're at, there's going to be one across the street. Pretty sure in River Falls there was like 8 of them. That's not true. There was one. But it felt like there was 8 of them. But okay, your third pick.
Yeah, this is actually an Iowa thing too. Now I was actually really glad they built one when I was there at Simpson. Canes has always been a regular for me, so I'd probably go with Canes.
That's a good one. Damn it.
They just specialize in one thing and they do it. So.
Yeah, they do chicken so well.
Yep. And then my other one, it's just a Chandler spot. I shouldn't say that. Bash coaches and Perry coaches and a bunch of other coaches go, but we all usually go to Cogburn's at some point, whether it's post game. Sometimes it's
what is it? What's it called?
It's called Cogburn's. Yep.
Cogburn's. I've never heard of that.
It's a local spot for us, owned by a Chandler High School alum. So
nice.
Discounted food's always gonna be a plus on whenever you wear your Chandler gear in there. So yeah, I'd probably have to go with that.
Okay, and I will go with Chick-fil-A.
There you go.
That's a good one to end it off. I like how none of these were like healthy meals.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. Hey, Coach Boyer, he's an O-line coach at Simpson. He's also the food guy. One thing I've learned about coaching is that your important coaches go head coach, offensive line coach, and then food guy. That's probably where I would rank it. And then maybe other than the coordinators. But as far as position coaches, O-line, food guy, next level. Coach Boyer's phenomenal food guy. He knows how to call a pizza ranch, that's for sure. But okay. Well, Austin, I really appreciate you coming on. Obviously a lifelong friend. Whenever you'd like to come on and join, more than welcome to. Always love talking ball with you. Anything else you want to say to people before we sign off?
Not much, man. Like big thing is just young guys who are looking to get into coaching, whether it's at, the high school level, college level, right? Kind of going back to what we talked about with the being in one place part, but be prepared to, eat your can of worms a little bit, is like what I like to call it. Is you're going to go through the shit sometimes, right? Especially when you're getting started out, right? If you're doing it the college way, you're going to be a grad assistant, you're going to be an analyst, you're not going to be doing much, right? High school level, you're going to start off as a freshman coach and have to work up. My first 2 years, I was a position coach at the freshman level. And then again, I worked my way up, got to be a play caller, got to kind of have the reins of that, have my own room, have my own unit that I got to control again. Now I'm working up. Now I'm just a position coach again, obviously at a higher level. But again, you got to be able to eat your can of worms and understand when it's time to put your nose to the ground and start working. So, especially at the high school level, again, at the lower division level, and when you start out, it's not the greatest paying job in the world. You're going to learn that. So you got to really want to do it. It's not something that, you're not going to go sit in a cubicle and half-ass it. It's one of those things you've got to do it. You can't just think that, oh, I'm going to be a head coach by the age of 30, right?
Yeah.
I've been in this position for 4 years, 26 now, about to be 27, have some little smaller, head coaching prospects, but, again, I'm very much about finding the right thing, be prepared to find the right thing at the right time. That's the best advice I could give to, any guy getting into the coaching world at any level.
Thanks, man. Appreciate everybody listening. See you next time. Peace.